All right, I see we have a few people in attendance, so we can get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Eileen Gazzola, the Senior Manager of Digital Marketing and Strategy here at Mestiza. Welcome back to our Living in Style panel series. We're so glad that you're here. In honor of our spring bridal collection that just launched yesterday, we wanted to gather the top industry professionals in the bridal space to talk about all things wedding. When we think about weddings, people often think about the aisle moment, but we believe that bridal style is bigger than that. It's the invitation that sets the tone, it's the rehearsal dinner look, it's the color story, it's the way everything feels cohesive from the first save the date to the farewell brunch. Tonight, we're talking about how to approach the entire bridal chapter with intention. And we're so lucky to be joined by women who truly define what that looks like in their respective worlds. Tonight, we have the pleasure of speaking with Sherry Berry, CEO and Creative Director of Sherry Berry Paper and Design, who, fun fact, was Alessandra's professor at Wash U. So we have a great full circle moment. We're also joined with Julie Sabatino, founder of TSB Styling, formerly known as The Stylish Bride, and Neely Butler, founder of Marie Ami Event Planning. And of course, the co-founders of Mestiza New York, Alessandra Perez Rubio and Louisa Rector, who, over the past decade, have been creating dresses for wedding guests, bridesmaids, and brides. We'll end the panel by answering a few questions submitted by the audience and announce our giveaway winner, so please stay with us through the end. Also, all panelists will be keeping an eye on the chat box, so feel free to react and ask questions in real time. All right, let's get started. So first, let's start right at the beginning and kick off the discussion with Neely and the wedding planning process. For many brides, the wedding planning journey begins with defining the overall vision and feeling of the celebration. So Neely, when a bride comes to you at the very beginning of planning, what is the very first decision that you help her define, and why does that decision shape everything that follows?
Thank you. I love the starting with this question. We're big believers in everything looking cohesive and everything going together, but we really, most importantly, we really want the wedding to reflect the couple. And so it's not the Mariami style, it's the bride's style and her vision. And so we try and get, a good understanding of like what is the bride's overall style kind of in life? What does she wear? What does her bedroom look like? What is her, when she's picking anything from fashion or where does she travel? Like who is our bride? And try and kind of understand what is her overall style as a person and does she want to reflect that in the wedding? 9 times out of 10, they really want it to be a good reflection of themselves. And so, we'll start looking at images and you can usually pick up on, what is it that are they a Southern bride? Are they more artsy? Are they, kind of want to think outside the box? Or they have fashion? So we really kind of try and zone in on their overall style before we ever dive into details. And, like this image right here was a good example of our bride was just very fashion forward and everything. She really kind of showed us fashion and the dresses that she wanted to wear. And that really showed us the style that then led into the floral palettes, which then led into the fabrics that we chose for the linens and then into every detail and pick the venue kind of around it as well. So it's really kind of a big picture style, and we want everything to cohesively go together.
I love that. Thank you. Because once you define the aesthetic, I feel like everything just falls into place after that. So it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Awesome. So our next question is for Cherie. Once a bride has defined her style vision, how do you translate that into an invitation suite that sets the tone before guests even arrive?
Yeah, so we really start the process super early in terms of the graphic designer's contribution to a wedding. So we are starting with the save the dates before, the wedding planner has brought in this, really fully vetted and define the vision for the client. So it's really our job to really ask probing questions that are more global questions. Like if your wedding were tomorrow, what would be the adjectives you might use to describe your wedding? Are you modern? Are you classic? Are you whimsical? Are you romantic? And oftentimes it's not just one or two, it could be a few of those words. And so after we hear that, then it's our job to sort of start that first layer. Of building the brand. I mean, we're really brand builders. Your stationer is really the person who's helping you build your brand. And the way we start that is by thinking about the foundation elements that every invitation suite needs. So we start to geek out on fonts. Like, what is the typography? How do you want your name to look on the invitation? How does mom want your name to look like on the invitation? What are the sub fonts? How is the URL very legible so everybody can get to the website successfully. And then we loop in color. Our clients are certainly doing very neutral color palettes, but also people love color now, which is awesome. So it doesn't mean that it's not a classic invitation if you have, a few different colors. It's just how you work in the hierarchy of those colors. What are the main colors? What are the sub colors? What are those accent colors? So we really approach a wedding invitation almost like we approach brand development for a company, like a fashion brand or a restaurant. No, thinking about as if this, wedding, we're not just a date and time that's over, how it lives on. And then, of course, the layer we love most is the storytelling component of an invitation suite. So really thinking about the couple. What are we really what are we really, latching on to for inspiration? Is it the venue because the bride grew up going to this venue with her family since she was knee high? Is it the couple's courtship, their love story? Is it about this perfect floral bouquet? Like it could be, there's no right or wrong answer. So the invitation suite is really setting the tone. And while we certainly need to think about the facts, right? We need to make sure people get to the church on time and that they know how to reply. And it's very functional. Oftentimes, the website is really that vehicle to really show, to really put more of those logistics on. Again, the invitation has to be accurate and it has to be, full of all the right details, but it's more of a romance piece that really does set the tone and is posterity for our client.
Absolutely. I love that you consider every little detail when it comes to stationery. It's so important and it really does set the tone. So for my next question, Julie, you work closely with brides during the months leading up to their wedding. So how does a bride ensure that what she wears from engagement parties to rehearsal dinners actually aligns with the aesthetic that she has created for the celebration?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, funnily enough, even though I've been doing this for 22 years, I had to kind of think about it because I'm not sure I've considered it in that specific angle. Because the tricky part with fashion, as you guys all know, is that it's not only about aesthetically aligning, but it's really about what makes a woman feel amazing on the inside. And then you get the confidence and all of the glow that you're looking for when you have that feeling. And it's highly, highly subjective. So, for our process, what we do is something very similar. We ask all of these crazy questions that we've defined over the years and, really hone to pull out what we need to know, and then understand what's most important to them and how, um, because I guess even if you have, the most amazing design that Neely is doing and the most amazing invitation suite that Cherie is doing. For fashion, there are other elements also that come into it. You've got your body type, you've got your weather, all of these different things that, and then personal style, of course, that we have to sort of consider through a different lens. And there's no one size fits all. So, the way that we handle that within our company is to really work closely with the partners. It's very common for us to receive the PDF of the invitation suite from Cherie's team. And then we will then send fabric swatches back to the designers and say, this is what we're doing. So we all collaborate really well together. But I think for an individual bride, I really, I think focusing on what truly makes you feel joy when you put it on is the key element. And what that is different for every woman.
Absolutely. It truly is such a personal experience to discover what your styles are going to end up being. So at this point, we've set the tone, we've defined the aesthetic, and we've styled the bride for the moment. But what we believe at Mestiza is that bridal style isn't just one look, it's a chapter. Which brings me to my next question. Alessandra, how should a bride think about building a cohesive bridal wardrobe? Not just one dress, but the full story from engagement to farewell brunch.
So I feel like this is sort of a question that me and Julie could probably answer together. But this is very much my opinion, but I really do think the bridal wardrobe as a story rather than just one dress. As you all know, today's weddings rarely just revolve around the single moment. There's the engagement party, the rehearsal dinner, welcome drinks, the ceremony itself, the after party, and then, of course, the brunch the next day. And each of those moments are just an opportunity to really express, for the bride to express a different facet of her personality. I think when a bride starts thinking about that wardrobe, the most important anchor is just setting the overall feeling of the wedding. So the venue and environment naturally give you cues, but if you're getting married by the sea, for example, then the fabrics might feel lighter and more fluid. If it's a garden wedding in spring, then that might open the door to florals or lace or dimensional textures that feel romantic and seasonal. But what I think makes it cohesive is not necessarily that it matches, but like that everything sort of feels connected and that like there's a thread that runs through the entire wardrobe. So when I'm designing an entire collection, I like to have a common thread through each piece to make sure that it feels like it's one part of like one story. So like maybe it's a motif like florals. Maybe it's a particular color palette or even a silhouette language. For a spring wedding, you might start with a subtle floral print, something that's really subtle with like light blues and really like subtle colors, a color palette. Um, for a daytime event. And then maybe you'll move into a more three-dimensional floral applique for the rehearsal dinner. And then you kind of end with a bang and have like a lace gown with a beaded floral motif for the ceremony as like that big wow factor. So each piece feels distinct, but they're all speaking the same language. I just really think weddings are one of those rare moments where you can just push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone, and the different events allow you to really experiment, which is fun.
I completely agree. Thanks, Al. So for next up, I'd love to go around and talk about what you guys are seeing brides gravitate towards right now and what you believe will still feel beautiful decades from now. So for Neely, in terms of planning and overall design, what are brides prioritizing in 2026 that feels modern but not fleeting? What choices do you think will age beautifully?
We really look at design and paper and fashion. Like most of our brides do want it to be timeless throughout, but they're also young and fun and seeing all this cutting edge modern touches and twists. And so there's the fine line of finding that balance between what mom wants and, what the brides want. And so, obviously in a design world, we're seeing, a lot of textures, a lot of colors, but then we kind of balance it with something that's maybe a little bit traditional. It's kind of like striking the balance is always the name of the game for us. And then, there's been a lot of kind of fun coming in for like unexpected entertainment. So it might be, after party, you may have the fun dancers dressed head to toe in sequins or with big light up butterfly wings, or you may have, the donkey coming in with the tequila shots, or just kind of those unexpected areas of fun, so that like the images and the pictures and everything what everybody takes away visually is kind of a little bit more beautiful and traditional. You can always throw the next element of fun in different forms of entertainment. And so we've seen a lot of that lately of, just trying to interact, whether it be, just we even had somebody ask for like a face painter at their reception. So, it's just always like little touches of of entertainment and fun. So.
That's a great idea to add an element of entertainment that's more about just the guest experience more so than the aesthetic. Awesome. So for next, Julie, our next question's for you. What are brides asking for right now in terms of their looks beyond the aisle? And what styling choices do you believe will feel timeless in photos years from now?
It's a great question. For the first time, maybe ever in my career, we have brides really focused on pieces that are really good that they can wear again. And I think for a long time, we would say, if you want to wear white all weekend, you're not really going to wear it again. So you have to think about the cost benefit analysis of buying something. But today, that opens the door for so many things. Brides are more into color. We have ways of taking one piece and like a darling little dress on here, and maybe for afterwards, we would consider adding, a black ribbon bow and then like cool black leggings and boots or something, like just to amp it up and give brides some versatility. They don't want to really invest in so much in a wardrobe for multiple events and not be able to wear any of them again. So I really love that, from a sustainability standpoint, it's also sentimental, but I think that giving brides options that, not only can be worn again, but are also multifunctional. People are loving, detachable sleeves and a little jacket and a little capelet that you guys actually do really well. So having fun elements like that to really change it up is something that we're seeing a lot of.
I was going to say, I feel like you're speaking to our convertible collection with that
Yes, well, I
answer,
love your
but
convertible collection,
we're
honestly.
seeing the same thing with brides, just loving the versatility. So I love that that's something that you're seeing with your customers too. So next for Cherie, what are you loving in invitation design right now that feels fresh, but still refined enough that a bride will look back at years later and still feel proud?
Yeah, that's a great question. People come to us when they want, classic with a twist. So we always really recommend that the ceremony invitation feels timeless, and that doesn't mean it has to be, black engraved script on cream paper, but that just means something that feels true and sacred to this union of why people are coming together. So that piece, I feel like people do stay pretty true to the ceremony invitation being classic. But then we have so much fun with all the other pieces. And so I would say maybe the trend lately has been a little understated. I feel like we were sort of in a box era for a while. And not to say we don't love a good box invitation, but we're sort of dialing down. There's a modesty, but that by no means it's boring. It's still full of personality. So we're really thinking about, the organization of all of our pieces. As Neely mentioned, there are so many events, and I would love to meet that bride that had the face painter. We could have a lot of fun with that one. But how do we, think about how can all these various events for one weekend that are wildly different from each other sometimes, in terms of the tone is one casual, one's formal, it's a pickleball tournament, it's a welcome party. I mean, people are having so much fun. So it's our job to really think about how all those pieces can be housed in one package, whether that's a simple envelope with one booklet that's a whole weekend at a glance, and every spread is sort of a different vibe that speaks to that event that's being hosted, or whether or not that's a piece that has all these very intuitive slits and containers to hold each piece. So we kind of think of it as like walking into a room, into a house that walks into different rooms, and how that can be sort of compartmentalized and still feel like you're giving each event or each ask, whether it's visit the website, RSVP here, its own little moment, but they can all live in nice union together. So we think that's always the way to go. It's not trendy, but you can't go wrong with that approach, we think.
And let me just add one thing, because I think it's kind of like you start with a base of foundation of all of like the planning. We're thinking, oh yay, I hope you hire Julie so she'll dress you appropriately, and Sheree will do the paper. And But it's kind of like you have a base of your foundation, like what I spoke with at the very beginning, like you have this overall vision, right? But then it's
Yeah.
like all the layering, I feel like, wouldn't y'all agree? Like
Yeah.
it's
All the
the
different chapters
layering,
of
and then
that
the
vision.
further you get out, like you start with the invitation, and then it's like all the pieces. And I feel like the further you get out, the more fun and twist and bell and whistle. And so that's kind of where the more modern approaches come. So that
Yeah.
it's kind of like all the add-ons, and the further you get out, the more trendy it becomes. But really at the heart of what we're planning, it's classic and timeless, whether it be fashion, paper, design, planning.
Right. Agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it. And so for our next question, this one's for Louisa. How can a bride make a statement without looking dated 5 years from now?
Well, making a statement while being timeless has really always been part of the Mestiza New York design DNA. Alessandra and I launched the brand 11 years ago after being inspired by the heirlooms left to us by our mothers and grandmothers. We really wanted our pieces to feel like heirlooms, something that people remember you by, but also something that you can pull from your closet years later and say, wow, that was a really great night. And I felt great wearing this dress and I can't part ways with it ever. So when we design bridal, we're always thinking about how a bride can have a moment. What's the wow factor, but also without sacrificing longevity. So one way we do that is through convertibility. And in this particular bridal collection that we just launched yesterday, you'll see some removable watteaus and sleeves, a bow belt that can really amp up an outfit. But the point is, I really love these convertible features because they're dramatic for the ceremony or for making an entrance, but then they can also be easily removed for dancing later in the evening. And brides really love that combination of impact and practicality. Another way that we make an impact for our brides is really always grounding the collection in the classics. Al and I did bespoke bridal years and years ago, and the number one inspiration that brides had was Carolyn Bessette, and that was really for her simplicity and timelessness. And this was before, the show came out, the book, and all that. So it just really comes to show that the classics really do hold true. And like I think everyone in this room or virtual room agree about that. And I will say too that I've also found it to be really fun to see how brides are leaning into color and experimenting with prints for either down the aisle or surrounding the big day. This is a trend that we saw in 2020 when everyone was having micro weddings, and I think that they felt more inspired to get creative and maybe do something a little different because it was like less pressure. But now that trend has really stayed. So I think I love it and I hope it's here to stay. And it's something that we at Mestiza are leaning into. But at the end of the day, so long as you're staying true to yourself and wearing the things that you personally love, I think that you're always going to look back happily at those moments.
It's great advice. Thanks, Lou. So next up, we received some really thoughtful questions from the audience ahead of tonight's panel. So let's dive into a few of those. Neely, we'll start with you. What's the most memorable wedding favor you've seen that really captured the spirit of the destination while still being something guests loved bringing home?
So I really feel like things like going back to kind of that interactive entertainment, that random little pop of excitement and fun in the corner over here. We did a wedding out in Montana that we had like a leather brander, and he was, you could put your initials or whatever, and they would brand the leather, and it was the luggage tag. And so that was like fun and easy, and they like kind of put it on their phone, but like people just loved that. We did a wedding at the Yellowstone Club, which is also out in Montana, and it was a smaller group. And so we were able to do a Stetson hat bar, and like they got to go and pick up and it was the welcome party. So it was like, they started the weekend off with this great looking new hat that had like their own embellishments and things like that. Um, I think they like to be creative. We've even had like a trucker hat bar where they get to go and design their own hat. But it's funny, I've been doing this for 17 years, and if I'm asked once, I'm asked 1,000 times, like, what am I going to pass out for fun, like favors on the dance floor? And I'm like, I'm so over that question, but they just love it, and we're trying constantly to come up with something new, which has been hard. But it's like I walk out with baseball hats and you would have thought it's their first hat they've ever seen ever. They like tackle our team, trying to get to the hats and always asking for more. And so, people are just excited. And I think when everything's kind of well planned out and everything is an experience or just like the guests feel like it's a treat, it doesn't matter what it is. People just get really excited and fired up. And again, you can hand out the same hat that you handed out 2 weeks before to the same group of people, and they would still love it. So, I think it's just kind of the well thought out. Where are we? And obviously, like trying your best to like make it make sense. We did, in Santa Fe, we do a lot of work in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's like, they have all these little tin this art done by like this little thin tin, and we did the place cards and escort cards on this tin, and they could take it home, and it ended up being like a Christmas ornament for people to use on their tree. um, so it's just kind of a little thought, a little nod. It's not, you also don't want it to be something that's like, oh, fun, and then they just toss it. You want it to have some sort of meaning so that the guest is excited to take it home.
The hat bar sounds amazing. I would love to attend to a wedding with that.
Right.
Our next question for you from the audience is, when planning a luxury wedding, where do you recommend couples invest the most in order to create the biggest impact for guests?
I really feel like guest experience is like the name of the game. And when I think of guest experience, it's not just like the to and from logistics experience. It's really like, what are they feeling? What are they tasting? What are they experiencing? A lot of times most of our weddings are destination, and the guests have traveled really far to be there, or they've gone to a big expense to be there. And it's like, how can we make sure they just feel like they are like the whole focus of why we're doing this? And then that transitions into like design. And sometimes maybe it's the dad's like, wait, why are we spending so much on design? Can't we just or trying to cut back or whatnot? But it's the weddings that people walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, look at the creativity, look at what is different, look at the details, and like they just take it all in. And it's just, yes, there's a fun band, and yes, it's a great party, but the design is actually it's really a lot more important than just what it looks like. It's like it makes people feel a certain way. From our wedding on Saturday, I got a call from a guest this morning who looked us up, and she said, I just want to let you know I am a random guest and it is Tuesday and I'm still smiling. And I am just so thankful I got to go to your wedding. And it was like, oh, wow. And it was just because of all the detail and the fun. And, you kind of look at it as a once in a lifetime opportunity for some of these guests to get to be in such a well planned, cohesive, seeing all the details, and they just get really excited. And so I guess the long answer is, design has a lot of importance. We all want it to just look pretty. We all want to take pictures of the pretty, but it really makes people feel special. And that's what we're all going for.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what everything's coming back to tonight, is that it's all in the details. That's what makes it feel so important. So thank you. Next, we have 2 questions for Cherie. First, how to address envelopes in this day and age?
Okay, so if you're talking about like actual mechanics, we still love hand calligraphy. I mean, again, we're getting so much machine calligraphy that when you do get hand calligraphy, it's really pretty amazing. But we know there is a cost and a time factor involved with that. And so, machine calligraphy has gotten really good. I mean, it's in terms of the colors, you can do any font, you can sort of cover the face of the envelope. So I would see we're seeing more and more of that happening. That doesn't mean we aren't using, hand calligraphy to have the bride and groom's name, letterpress on the invitations. There's still an artistry of the hand and other spot calligraphy places within the suite. But yes, that has become, hard to compete against how quickly you can hit a button and print the envelopes. If you're talking more about like, the actual, etiquette, it really depends on your preference in terms of formality. How formal is the wedding? Do you want to do Mr. and Mrs. and mix and all of that, then that is still quite common on the invitation itself. Now, save the dates, those titles are usually omitted, but for the actual invitation, oftentimes titles are still being used. We even have a client right now who's collecting all middle names because she wants to go, super formal and make sure that all the inside envelopes have first, middle, and last names for all those guests that are being invited. So it kind of just depends on your formality preference and also just knowing the in person that gets it. Probably grandma and grandpa might want to have Mr. and Mrs. on there. So because it feels like it's maybe their generation. So just kind of knowing your audience and being true to yourself.
Props to the bride who's getting all the middle names.
I know I mean, it's hard enough to get addresses. So getting middle names is pretty
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah.
Very Southern thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So true. So our next question for you is for couples who may not realize how detailed stationery can be, what elements beyond the main invitation should they consider for a cohesive wedding experience?
Yeah, again, sort of back what I first said about we are really the storytellers of this whole show in terms of when you get this upfront communication that happens, usually twice, sometimes printed save, sometimes printed invitation before you even show up that weekend. We can really make it up as we go. So if you like, say you're only hosting the wedding and a reception, and you aren't someone who's gonna host a welcome and a brunch and a this and that, that's okay. We can still have fun pieces that we can include inside that again give it that romance. We're doing a lot of after party insert cards, right? You don't really have to tell people there's an after party. Once they're there and they're locked in, they are just staying. But if you want that little disco ball or that little, espresso martini die cut card that has your monogram on it, like let's put that in there because again, that is we're the vibe setters, setting that tone. And so that again just lets people know it's going to be a great night. It doesn't mean that you're, having to invite the makeup things to spend more money and have more parties. It's just again the romance of it all. So again, you can stretch things even if you don't have all facts to communicate.
I love thinking about it as the vibe setter because it truly is with the first stationery that you ever get that sets the tone. So what a cool way to think about it. Next, we have two questions for Julie. First off, are brides still wearing something blue?
Yeah, I think that they definitely are, and they're trying to find more fun and personalized ways of expressing that. And a lot of times you don't even see it, but it could be something that we embroider on the inside of the dress or in a vintage linen that we sew in or wrap around the bouquet, or we do a lot of things like shoes or jewelry. All of the special details, um, I think, are so important because those are the things that you pass down to your children. And we do get a lot of pieces from grandmothers, great grandmothers that we then incorporate and use. So it is alive and well, and of course carries over into the fashion as well.
Absolutely. And those details are what makes it so special. So our next question for you is, what's one mistake you see brides make when choosing their dresses and how can they avoid it?
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to feeling pressured to make a decision. Um, when you go wedding dress shopping, there are a lot of factors and a lot of elements to consider. And timeline is one of them, and there are realities to it. But I've talked to many brides over the years that felt pressured to make a decision, not our clients, thank God, but that they needed to, they were there, they felt like, oh my gosh, this is great and it's on a trunk show and it's going away, or oh, I only have 6 months to order. And we always, always recommend that our clients sleep on it overnight, even if they're 100% sure. We just think taking a step back and visualizing yourself in the dress and the space is really valuable. Uh, I remember one time many years ago, I had a bride who was like, no, no, I don't need to do that. I'm good. And um, she seemed very decisive. So I was like, okay, if that's it and you want to make the decision now, fine, you don't need to. And she calls me the very next day. She's like, do you think they placed the order yet? Because by the way, these orders are the deposits are non-refundable. So you put 50% deposit down on most wedding dresses. And she was like, do you think maybe they didn't do it yet? And I'm like, okay. And we ended up with a totally different dress. So I think that just taking a minute and taking a step back is a really important piece and will help you avoid a lot of mistakes.
That's really great advice. Thanks, Julie. Next up, we have a question for Alessandra. Someone would love to know your personal favorite choices from Mestiza Bridal for showers, rehearsal dinners, and even the big day.
Yes, it's hard for me to pick. I feel like all of them are my favorites, because I design them. But one thing I think that really like rings true for this whole panel is that the whole wedding process is really about emotion, like picking out the dress out of your wardrobe years to come and having the memory that's associated with it. Um, so I think that like when I'm looking at all these dresses, these are the dresses that I kind of look at as what I would like to create that really special memory in. So for the bridal shower, I personally love the Terno Alessandra. I named it after myself. The Alessandra lace Terno dress. It is very much a heritage style. You can see it here in the top right corner. I wanted a dress that really spoke to my Filipino heritage in the collection. So it has these really traditional Terno sleeves that a lot of women wear to formal weddings and events in the Philippines. And I wanted to kind of like incorporate that into our collection. For rehearsal dinner, one of my absolute favorites is the Amanda gown. It is a scoop neck gown with a big blue sash, and it has a really delicate floral print on it. It's very romantic. It feels a little bit unexpected for bridal. I love it when brides wear color on their wedding weekend and for some of their events. So that's why I would pick this one. For walking down the aisle, I would choose an Narita gown. It's sort of like that very traditional silhouette, strapless. It's a drop waist, very, very flattering on the waist, and it has this timeless, beautiful, like floral applique on it. And then for the after party, I really like the Dottie dress. So we have the Dottie dress in both a beaded version and a like lace version. I think it's literally the most perfect after party dress. I actually designed it. Shout out to Eileen for Eileen's after party. And so she wore it and everybody loved it. And so we decided to kind of bring it into our actual bridal line. So that's one of my favorites. And then last but not least, for the honeymoon, I love our Esperanza lace midi dress. It's like this beautiful 3D floral linen dress that you can just throw some flats on, wear it to the beach, super easy.
It's hard to pick a favorite, but I stand
Hard to pick a
Dottie.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're all amazing. Everyone check them out on the website.
And the Dottie
Yeah.
is in a little corner over there.
Oh yeah, we have the lace version.
With the lace version here, and I actually personally think with the blue sash from the Amanda together,
Oh,
magic.
yeah, that's great.
Gorgeous. All right.
Repurposed, yeah.
That brings us to our next question. Louisa, how can our current brides find a white dress that is bridal without it being a wedding dress?
Well, that's such a great question because it's exactly the gap that inspired us to create our own bridal line in the first place. We actually kept hearing from women that when they went to a traditional bridal salon, everything felt just a little too formal or too literally wedding dress. And what we realized was that today's brides have this entire chapter, like we've been talking about events surrounding the wedding. So, like we've said, the proposal, the dinner, the rehearsal dinner, engagement party, bridal shower, and those moments deserve beautiful pieces too, but they don't necessarily call for a full out bridal gown. So when we design this category, we focus on pieces that feel, like a celebration, but are still wearable. And I think fabric plays a huge role in that. So for example, we incorporated materials like linen and linen organza, which feel lighter and more effortless than a traditional bridal fabric. We also love incorporating subtle prints and delicate florals. A white floral dress still reads bridal, but it feels a little softer and a little unexpected. And most importantly, it's something that you could wear again to a luncheon or a derby party, a garden party, or any other kind of event that comes your way later down the road. So for us, the sweet spot is really a dress that feels special enough for the bridal moment, but versatile enough that it doesn't live in the back of your closet forever.
That's the best bonus when you can rewear something on your honeymoon or even beyond. Thanks, Lou. Okay, so before we wrap up and announce the lucky giveaway winner, I wanted to share some exciting news. So, Mestiza New York is now offering virtual and in-person private styling appointments at our showroom here in New York City. If you're in New York or planning to come, you can book your appointment directly through our website or simply reach out over Instagram and we'll point you in the right direction. Very exciting. So next up for our giveaway, tonight you all entered into a giveaway to win $400 to shop Mestiza for your new bridal wardrobe, $300 towards beautiful personalized stationery from Cherie Berry, plus a styling session at the Jewel Box. So, drum roll please, our giveaway winner is Jordan Bouchard. Congratulations. We will be emailing you with the details. Yay.
Congratulations.
I know you, Jordan. Congrats.
Awesome. We'll start shopping. And thank you again for our incredible panelists for joining us tonight and everyone who took time out of their evening to be here. If you've enjoyed this conversation, we'd love to hear from you and hope you'll join us again for our next Living in Style panel.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
That was so
you.
fun. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.